Today I'm going to be taking a look at another show that I have never seen before, Fugget About It. Now, I've really only heard from a lot of people that this is basically Italian Family Guy, which makes me believe that on a dark and stormy night, Seth MacFarlane was leaving the office hot off of making a Family Guy episode, and he was like, "Oh, I'm such a good show writer. I'm so good at making incredible adult animated shows. Oh gosh." And he's walking through the street, and then a little Italian mobster man just sprints up to him, and he just goes, "Forget about it," and just starts, just horking on it, just draining his essence so that he could go and create his own clone Slop spin-off. That's probably how every spin-off or Slop reboot or rip-off of Family Guy comes to fruition. They all just have to get a little bit of Seth MacFarlane's essence. At least, that's my guess. In reality, I know nothing about the show. I don't even know if it's actually a Family Guy ripoff, but that was my initial impression because that's what a lot of people have said. So I'm going to be seeing, was Fugget About It actually bad? And if you like content just like this, please make sure to like and subscribe because I upload almost every single day and you don't want to miss it. And if you want a place where you can talk about your favorite games, movies, and shows, my Discord will be in the description. Now let's finally take a look at Fugget About It. The first episode that I took a look at was Horspring Paternal, and I will say that the main jokes that the show decides to rely on are kind of just painfully average. There was nothing that was getting me up out of my seat, giving it a good old-fashioned knee slapper, nothing like that that really kept me entertained. Where it really excels at is in the physical comedy. They do a lot of fun stuff with the animation, they do a lot of silly stuff with the characters, and that's really where the show shines a little bit. This episode was definitely just okay. The beginning of the episode is just a young Jimmy Falcone. That's our main character just being like, "I always wanted to be a wise man. I always wanted to, but, forget about it. You don't need to know how. I learned how to be a wise man." And then he just tells the story anyway about how he snuck into his father's trunk late into the evening and he was like, "Oh, Papa, please, Papa, let me join you. I want to be a wise man. Come on, Papa." And his papa says, no, you're not gonna be doing nothing like that. So Jimmy grabs a gun and shoots his right-hand man, and all of a sudden, Jimmy knew what was right. We cut to the present where Jimmy is telling the story, saying that it was a great emotional moment between father and son, and then his daughter, Regina, just, grabs a gun and shoots Jimmy's dad in the chest like, "Oh yeah, let me in now."
Oh, but Cheech!
This kid, what a card.
Yeah, and that's the beginning of the episode, and it's just okay. It's nothing too crazy, nothing too special. The introduction song is a lot of fun. I got to hear that for the first time, where it's like, he ratted out all his friends and moved to Saskatchewan. Oh, forget about it.
So he ratted out his friends and moved to Saskatchewan. Forget about it.
Forget about it. Yeah, it's pretty solid. I did enjoy that a lot. That was fun. We then cut to the main sequences of the episode, which involve Jimmy, his wife, and his dad driving to take this cabinet home, and they see this horse, and Jimmy, he tries to match that speed because he's like, "Oh, look at that horse. Look at that horse. I gotta match that speed of that horse." And so he's going as fast as he can, and the cabinet falls off his car, so he decides to buy the horse, and he names it Cookie's fucking wardrobe. Yes, genuinely, he names it after his wife. His wife's name is Cookie. So then we get thrusted into the thrilling comedy that the show is willing to offer, with this guy named McCool coming over, and he has a horse. And Jimmy looks at him and he's like, "Hey, what'd you name that horse?" And he's like, "I named it Horse." And Jimmy, something was brewing deep inside of him. Something just snapped. He didn't like that. He's just staring at this horse named Horse. And he's like, "Oh no, bro. There is no way a horse can possibly be named Horse. God damn it." And he goes inside and he's like, "God, a horse named Horse? That's like if I called my son by what I think of him. Hello, son. My disappointment of a son. Hello."
Daughter and Antichrist? Hey, look, it's my son. Massive disappointment.
Hey!
And that's the big joke that ends that entire sequence there. And it's just kind of whatever. They do a lot of jokes that are just like that aren't very funny. Hence why I prefer the physical comedy in the episode. We then cut to our side plot, which focuses on the daughter Teresa, the eldest daughter. And when she is in a bad mood, she's able to give the ultimate stink, like... Yeah, did you like shit your pants or like piss yourself or your girlfriend broke up with you when I gave you that dirty, nasty look? Yeah, that is what Teresa is able to do to people. And I don't really think this is the most thrilling B-plot they could have possibly chosen, but I will say I did get a chuckle out of one scene where she gives the nasty look and it's like a curse, and she causes this fucking shelf to fall on this guy, and then just out of nowhere a bald eagle just appears out of nowhere and carries her brother away just because she gave a nasty stinky look at him.
Ha!
I thought that was kind of funny. I did thoroughly enjoy that, you know. I'm all down for some good old-fashioned physical comedy. There's nothing wrong with that. So we then cut to everything that's going on with the horses. You know, the horses, the good old-fashioned horses. And it turns out that when they go to race Cookie's fucking wardrobe, she actually is preggy. Oh my god, pregnant horse. Oh my god, pregnant horse. Jimmy doesn't like this though, and there's only one way that Cookie could have gotten pregnant. That is if the horse named Horse gave it the old schlong, the old horse cack. So he gets very upset about this, and they go to court. And again, none of the jokes necessarily hit here, but the physical comedy, it is on point. Everything they're saying is just kind of whatever, but then there's this one scene where they're trying to establish a connection of how the horses began canoodling and just diving into each other, and fucking Jimmy's dad is showcasing how this could have happened, and he has two horse figurines, just two horses, and he just starts going, nay, 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 you know, just making them do the dirty nasty with each other, which ultimately I thought was a little bit funny.
Get on with it!
Can you imagine going into court for something very serious, like, I don't know, a sexual assault, and your fucking lawyer goes up there and he's like, Your Honor, here before me I have a figurine of Mr. John Doe here, and here's Mr. Jane. Okay, well, just watch. This is probably what happened. So, he probably started using his schlong to go like this. And that's probably how it happened. Case closed, case shut. You know exactly what happened here. Like, I couldn't fathom that happening, but I thought it was pretty funny in the context of the show. And he does eventually lose the court case, which means he owes Jimmy thousands of dollars. So, the only way that he could possibly get this money is to go and see his father. And his father seems to be quite the rich man. He's got mucho dinero. So, Jimmy, his dad, and McCool, they go to see him, and they're just having a nice talk with him. It seems like everything would go fine, and then Jimmy mentions, Hey yo, I'd like to talk to you about your past. You know, can I ask you a question? And this guy looks him dead in the eye and is like, grabs a fucking bottle and smashes it over his head and just jumps out the window.
Lithuanian discount cola! That discount cola's pretty good!
Which I thought was funny because, I mean, you know, maybe he just wants to talk about your past where you were getting too silly on a yacht and you made passionate love to a man named Jimmy Falcone. Maybe it could have been a reprisal of that, not a deep, dark past, you know? It could have been something special, something amazing. But no, he just jumps out the window. So they start chasing him, and they eventually catch up to him, and McCool shows up, and it's revealed that McCool is his son to his father because they hadn't seen each other in years upon years. So they start bonding and forming a good bond, and I don't know, it's just a little bit weird. It has like that oh papa vibe, like oh papa, and then he jumps into his arms and he's just being held like a little baby, but he's a man, and they're eating a pizza, and they do like the Lady and the Tramp where they're eating the pizza and the cheese, it gets so cheesy, and they just start kissing each other, which, you know, I hate to be that guy. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to be that guy. But I don't really like incest in my adult comedy. I don't really like two people of the same bloodline just smooching. Like, this isn't Tom Brady over here going, no, whoa. Come here, son. That's better. You see, you never give your dad just a peck. It's always more than that. You need to show me that you love me. You know, I'm not really into that personally. I just think it's a little bit odd. So, Jimmy and his dad, They both think that McCool's father's trying to con him out of the money, and they run him out of town, and he calls, and it turns out that he wasn't trying to do any of that, yada, yada, yada. It's just whatever. And I didn't really talk about the B-plot much, but eventually that all ended when Teresa gave herself the curse, and they, like, wanted to post her pictures online, so she had to keep her stank eye curse under control. It was just kind of an average B-plot, like, nothing too crazy. And that's pretty much the episode. That's all it's really got to offer. And for my first, introduction to the show, I will say that it doesn't do anything that amazing. It feels like it does stuff that I've seen in other shows, just a little bit worse. I will say it does excel at physical comedy. I did get a couple of chuckles, but it's not like it's necessarily bad. Like, there were a couple of moments that I did enjoy. I found this episode overall entertaining. I'm not gonna just completely and utterly shit on it. I just don't think it's the best thing in the world. I think it's just, pretty gosh dang average. So if I was to use my wise mind and all of my thoughts to rank this 1 to 10, I would probably give it a solid, 6 out of 10. Nah, 5 out of 10. I just think it's painfully average. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it to make me want to hate myself while watching it, but there's nothing so good that I want to rank it any higher. Just average 5 out of 10, middle of the road for my introduction to the show. The next episode that I took a look at was None of Your Business, and I think the beginning of it was kind of funny. It's a very interesting way to explain why Italians talk with their hands so much. With Jimmy telling the story about how in Sicilian, nobody could really talk to each other. A guy, he just walked up to the police and was like, "Hey, can I get some directions?" And then they threw him in a lake and he died. So nobody really said anything. Even when houses were on fire, they couldn't say anything to each other.
Even if my great-grandpa's pants were on fire, he still would have kept his mouth shut.
So they learned to talk with their hands, just using hand motions to communicate. And that is why the Italians talk with their hands so much, talk to the hand. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That was the beginning of the episode. I thought it was kind of funny. I enjoyed it. So we then get into the actual episode, and I think this is also, like, inherently pretty funny, where McCool shows up to Jimmy's family's house. Everybody's there, and he's like, "I got some news, everybody. I got some horrible news. Your grandmother is dying. Oh no!" And they all start crying. They all start grieving. They're so sad about their poor little old grandma dying in Sicily and all alone. And that is when he says, "It's okay, guys. It's okay, everybody. I've arranged for her to come here for one final visit." How thrilling is that? Everybody get up, start clapping, cheer for me. I'm a good guy. And then they all just start going, "I don't want to see that bitch."
Are you out of your freaking mind?
I don't want to see her. I hate that bitch.
"I don't want to see that whore." Yeah, so they really don't want to see their grandma. I can't imagine, like, faking fucking that reaction. Like, I can't imagine, like, somebody in my family was gonna die, so I pretend that I'm crying, and then I get to see them one more time, and I'm like, "That fucking bitch. I don't want to see that stupid, dirty, skanky whore." Like, what? That's such an odd reaction. But either way, the grandma is, in fact, coming. And that is when we get introduced to, once again, I've only seen 2 episodes and I picked these at random. Both of these contain incest plots. I mean, the first one was more of just a throwaway joke where the dude was kissing his dad, but that's still a little bit weird. Here, the incest is just full and frontal the entire time. So the grandma, she shows up, she shows up, and I hope that nobody's grandma is truly like this, because I couldn't fathom if my fucking grandma got off the plane from Italy and the first thing she looks at me and says is, "Hey, Porky Pig, what the fuck you doing here, huh? About time you saw me, huh?" And walks over to my wife and is like, "Oh, so you brought the whore?"
Oh, Jimmy, I see you bring a the whore.
Ah, you brought her. And she has like a crinkle and wrinkly old skin. She's like beginning to decay. She's like a fossil that's gonna be used up in a second. Like just walking around insulting my entire family. She looks at my daughter and is like, wow, you've gotten fat. Like, can you imagine that's your introduction? Like, you don't even say hello. You just point out everybody's biggest flaw. Like, that's what the grandma starts doing. And so you could understand why everybody's a little bit hesitant to even have her here in the first place. And the only reason she is here is because they have to see her one more time and they're pretending that it is New York. Because if she finds out that Jimmy is a rat, she might be very, very angry about that realization. At the same time, this turbo mega baddie gets off the plane, and one of the characters, I don't even really remember his name, fucking, Petey Falcone, he sees her, and he's like, my heart is skipping so many beats right now. Oh God. And he falls in love at first sight. He zings with this woman. He wants her really bad, except that is literally his cousin. His sister even points it out within the first second that this man is gawking at her. She points it out like, hey man, that's your cousin. Like, don't be getting too freaky. And he's like, but you know, it's just a cousin, right? And so they go home, and the cousin storyline just keeps on coming because they make this like little statue. I think it's supposed to be the Statue of Liberty, but they just painted a moose and a piece of it falls, and the cousin jumps into Petey's arms and he's like roping her. He's like, handful of ass. And his fucking grandpa walks over and he's all like, hey, just so you know, that the handful of ass you got, the ass you're groping, that's your cousin's ass.
Il mio hero.
You know that's your cousin's ass you're groping.
Okay, so you got 2 warnings here, buddy. 2 warnings that you're just walking the thin old line of incest and potential children that don't look right. You know? Just saying, your chances of having a child that, you know, shouldn't really be that way because you decided to canoodle with your blood is increasing rapidly, and it's a little disgusting, just saying. So he's doing that, and then at the same time, they're just trying to keep Jimmy and the grandma from finding out that Jimmy was not in the mob anymore and he ratted out all of his friends, which is actually a very interesting plotline, which I wish they would have focused on more in this episode. They focused way more on the cousin having sex thing instead of the actual important plotline, because the idea of a ancient relative coming to find out what's going on with your life, and she thinks you're an Italian mobster. It goes deep into your roots, deep into your origins, that you're in the family, and you have to try to convince her that you're still a part of that you didn't rat out a bunch of people. That's a really interesting concept, and they just didn't necessarily do a whole lot with it. Instead, we got a bunch of interesting scenes where, fucking Jimmy's dad, he put a cork up his ass so he wouldn't fart around his mother. Okay.
It's the guy to talk to. Who? I said.
Who's that now?
You know who I mean. It's...
Yep. So he does that, and then there's this entire scene where they're trying to ask him a question on what to do, and he's just ripping massive ass the entire time, and that's all you could hear. And I'm just asking myself, we're in an adult animated show. What is the importance of this? Tell me a really funny joke. Why do you have to resort? Like, what is the writer's room doing? Like, okay, guys, you know what we have to do right now? You know, we can basically tell any joke we ever wanted because we were an adult animated show. We can make any joke. But let's just have an adult man just rip stinky ass for 30 seconds because he has a cork in his ass, and that's the entire joke. And then the little girl, after the cork like bursts out of his ass, it flies around the room and it goes into the little girl's mouth, and she says, "Puh, it doesn't taste as bad as that eggplant you put in there," which has some weird undertones that made me uncomfortable. I hope that she meant a real eggplant, but I don't know. That just felt like a really weird thing to say at that time, you know? So we then cut back to the much more interesting plot, obviously, of the cousins getting freaky and nasty with each other, extra freak with the side of freak. They get pictures taken, they go to a picnic together, they're doing all of this stinky, weird stuff together, and eventually it's nighttime, and Petey, he's a little piss boy, and there's some thunder, so he's pissing himself. His cousin comes down and is like, "Oh, I heard that you might be struggling with the thunder." And they're staring at each other, and they're about to smooch, and then he even utters the word, "Oh, we can't do this, we're cousins, we can't." And his cousin looks him dead in the eyes and is all like, "Cousin, isn't that just a word?" And then they start kissing. And I don't know why that has to be the plot line that you have to choose. I feel like you could do much more interesting things. Like, why couldn't it be like a nurse, like a helper for the grandma? Like, would that have changed it that much? It still could have been forbidden fruit. Like, you could have, like, I don't know, put a chastity belt on her, and he has to, like, try to break in with a hammer, like, "Let me in! Let me in!" You know, instead of cousins getting dirty with each other. I feel like that would have been more interesting. So we cut back to the main plot line with Jimmy, and he's trying to host this big old banquet, this Italian banquet, to, like, pull off the fact that he looks like he's still in the mob, except he has this improv group helping him, and it doesn't really look very mobbish, you know, it's not really looking that way. And one scene that I did laugh at, because it's just an improv group, he doesn't really know what's going on, he just thinks that Jimmy is just, you know, pretending to be an Italian mobster, so he walks up to Jimmy, pats his belly, and he's like, "Jimmy Spaghetti, big belly." Like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine being a grandma thinking that your son is in the mob, and somebody walks in and calls him Spaghetti, big belly? That was kind of funny. And so they're just doing a bunch of that nonsense, and then the cousins show up, and they're like, "We just got married! Yippee!" Yeah, so they're married now, and we get, like, a bottle stand-up between their family because, you know, they just did incest. At least every other character is aware of the fact that it's kind of weird, except they think that it's more okay to just do the nasty with your cousin, you know, sweet, succulent coitus. And marrying her is the weird part. I think it's all weird, but whatever. So, that's going on, and then Jimmy has to eventually admit that he's not in the mob because his grandma's just figuring out too many things. And there's this weird thing where they pin, like, this murder on Petey, and then the grandma just stabs Petey in the stomach. Oh, I have the hiccups. Oh my god. Fuck. The demons! The incest demons! They're fighting me! They're trying to get me for speaking out against cousin and cousin relations! Ah! Okay, he stabs Petey, and then Petey, he just falls, and that's the end of the episode, and there's no, like, resolution for the weird-ass cousin plotline. Like, I was expecting so much more to stop that from happening, but it just ends, and I assume that they just kept being married and kept doing incestual coitus, which, you know, is not very great to hear about, to say the least. So, yeah, if I was to rate this episode 1 to 10, I would probably give it a solid, I don't know, 6 out of 10. Again, it doesn't do anything so amazing, but I thought it was better than average. It has some decent jokes, really entertaining plotline, even if it was very incestual. At least they, like, were aware of the fact that it was weird, and they constantly, like, were writing about how it was weird and how we shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. It doesn't take away from how disgusting it is, but I feel like it was just a social commentary on how weird it is to do that stuff with your cousin, so it ultimately worked for me. So still, solid 6 out of 10. I did have a third episode lined up for this video, and I watched the entire thing, and I was like, wow, there's genuinely not a single joke I can make about anything that goes on in this episode because it's just flat out boring. That is the most painful thing that a show can do. You could be bad, and you're so bad that it's actually funny, but when something is boring, then there's just nothing to talk about. It's just over and over again, just me stating, wow, this is boring, wow, this sucks. I think that was just one of the worst episodes that I could have looked at, because the other 2 episodes I looked at, they were decently fun. Again, I don't think this is the most amazing show ever. I don't think it's gonna be must-see TV, something that you just have to grip onto, something that you just have to latch onto, like you're gonna just be seeking this constantly. I don't think it's going to be that, but I think it does have its own identity. I think it can be separate from Family Guy. Guy. I don't even necessarily think they were trying fully to copy it, because the characters are unique, the concept is unique, and the plot lines were typically just linear, focusing on one specific story, not relying on cutaways, doing its own thing. It's just another adult animated show that doesn't necessarily try to be like Family Guy. It does have its problems, like sometimes they do just let a old man rip stinky ass for too long, or they like some incest plot lines. I wonder how many of those are in there if I was 2 for 2 in random episode pickings. It's just an interesting show, a very interesting show. But I mean, if it was on, if I was like at a hotel or something and Fugget About It was on, then I probably wouldn't be having a bad time. It is definitely an option, so I'm not saying it's the worst thing ever, not saying it's the best thing ever. It's just painfully average to me. That's all it really is. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. I know this one is a little bit short. I'll have the average 30-minute ones up again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. So nothing to worry about there. Just, yeah, I appreciate you guys a lot. If you want to support me more, my Patreon is in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.